Have you ever felt life whispering in your ear, an essential message from the psyche, yet inaudible to the conscious mind? As if an inner king were guiding you to the depths of your soul, yet the signs remain hazy, difficult to decipher, like a forgotten dream upon waking. In truth, these signs vibrate clearly and constantly, emanating from the self, but most, trapped by the immature ego, ignore them, returning to stagnation, to a repetitive and exhausting cycle of the immature warrior. I, too, have been in that place, resisting the silent voice that, like an ancestral shaman, yearned for change within me, trapped by the tyranny of the pure eternus. Until one day, with the strength of the inner king, I recognized the patterns silently woven into my life by the self, intuition strengthening, the need to hear the whispers of the unconscious, the deep voice of the inner sage. Upon connecting with these signs, everything illuminated. The unconscious, the dwelling place of archetypes, never falls silent. It whispers, guides, opens inner doors to the development of a full personality. But without listening to it, without honoring the archetypes, we can remain trapped in the same mistakes, unaware of their repetition, like a warrior trapped in endless battle. I don't want that for you. That's why I created this message, to share how to recognize, decipher, and act upon these subtle yet transformative signs, leading you to the initiation of mature life. If you have the patience to remain until the end, with the perseverance of the mature warrior, you will realize that your recent experiences are not coincidences, but an awakening closer than you imagine, a call from the self to individuation. Robert Moore suggests that the unconscious seeks to communicate through dreams, intuitions, subtle shifts in emotions and thoughts, like an underground river irrigating the dry land of consciousness. These changes are not random. They are clues, sometimes as faint as a breeze, others as vibrant as the fire of the soul, illuminating the path of development and transformation, the hero's journey in search of his totality. The problem is that many live on autopilot, repeating patterns, floating, trapped in the same cycle, like puppets manipulated by unconscious archetypes. At some point, the inner calling, the voice of the king, becomes undeniable. Some awaken. What once held meaning now seems faded, like a rusty sword. The old no longer matters. The worldview transforms, like the metamorphosis of a caterpillar into a butterfly. But this new perception brings confusion. I'm changing, but where to? What is my purpose on the hero's journey? What if I told you that finding this video is no coincidence? Robert Moore would refer to this as synchronicity, an alignment with the self, a meaningful coincidence, where seemingly random events carry a profound message at the exact moment you need it most, like a beacon in the darkness of the night. Perhaps you were guided here because your mind seeks something, like a knight in search of the Grail. Perhaps your unconscious, guided by the archetype of the sage, knows you are ready and has led you to the right place at the right time, like a predestined encounter. When we are ready with the courage of the mature warrior, the universe conspires. The signs appear. An unexpected encounter, a casual phrase, an inexplicable feeling, a repetitive pattern. Everything reflects the deep movements within us, like the echo of the self's voice in deep caves. If you feel something moving, if you encounter the same circumstances repeatedly, like a message trying to manifest itself, guided by the invisible hand of the king, it's likely that you are being guided to a deeper version of yourself, to an encounter with the self. Stop, breathe deeply, and ask yourself, did my unconscious send signals that I ignored because I wasn't silent, because I wasn't listening to the voice of the sage? If the answer is yes, don't worry, you are not alone, nor is it too late to embark on the hero's journey. The first sign, often silent but crucial, is isolation, the call to the solitude of the inner desert. Almost everyone on a journey of inner development, in search of individuation, goes through this phase. You distance yourself from some relationships. Conversations that were once easy now seem strange, like dialogues in different languages. Close people seem out of tune, like instruments out of tune in an orchestra. You realize that some bonds were based on habit or convenience, not on true connection, on the energy of mature love. This is the first step of transformation. the beginning of the journey to the self. Initially, this feeling is confusing, as these people were part of your life like fellow travelers. Along the way, things change. But as Robert Moore would say, the unconscious, guided by archetypes, seeks connections aligned with our stage of evolution, our position on the hero's journey. As we grow inwardly, with the wisdom of the sage, some relationships lose their resonance like echoes dissipating in the vastness of the desert. This doesn't mean these people are negative or that you should break away with the fury of the immature warrior. It means you are changing, evolving on the hero's journey. If your old interests have lost their meaning, if your worldview expands and you feel someone trying to hold you back to your old self, like chains preventing the eagle's flight, your unconscious, under the protection of the king, guides you to a new journey, to the quest for the inner grail. Often this distance needs no explanation. It happens silently, like the changing seasons. The conversations became sparse, like raindrops in an arid desert, common ground dissolving like morning mist. And, though this may create a feeling of loss, like longing for an ancestral home, remember, it's not a detour, but a natural part of growth, of the hero's journey in search of individuation. Differentiate transformative loneliness from destructive loneliness. Separating from some relationships may be necessary to reconnect with yourself, to hear the voice of the self in the silence of the desert. But if loneliness lingers, if it turns into disconnection from the world, like a hermit lost in his cave, it's a warning sign, a call to return to the community. Positive loneliness is when you withdraw to know yourself, reflect, reinvent yourself without external influences, like the warrior who sharpens his sword in the solitude of the mountain. In this silence, you may remember someone, but deeply, with the compassion of the sage. You grow stronger each day, finding yourself, like the hero who discovers their true power on the solitary journey. Negative loneliness arises when distance becomes a burden, when you no longer wish to connect, and loneliness ceases to be a choice, becoming a prison, like the warrior imprisoned by the dragon of fear. You avoid dialogues, feel misunderstood, live defensively, believing no one understands you, like a castle surrounded by invisible enemies. This loneliness steals strength. It doesn't nourish it. Like a vampire sucking the life force. Listen to yourself. Are you distancing yourself to grow or to get lost? If loneliness brings clarity, renewed beliefs, a deep connection with your inner self, you are on the right path, following the trail of individuation. But if it brings emptiness, uncertainty, disorientation, lack of motivation, seek a new balance like the warrior who finds rest after the battle. If you distance yourself from some people, don't hold them back. Don't force yourself to return to places where you no longer belong, like a river following its natural course to the sea. Trust the process. New connections will arise, people who will connect with your more mature version, with the wisdom of the inner sage. But don't ignore it if loneliness becomes a weight, an obstacle on the hero's journey. The unconscious always sends signals, and the reward is for those who listen, for those who dare to decipher the language of archetypes. To help you understand this phase, I've prepared a playlist that will help you identify whether the loneliness you are experiencing is a journey of transformation or a trap that distances you from the world, a call from the king, or a whisper from the pure Eternus. You will learn to overcome this phase in a healthy way, with the strength of the mature warrior, without it becoming an obstacle in the search for the self. The playlist is in the video description. Don't miss it. Another common sign, but often misinterpreted, is emptiness, regarding what once inspired and gave purpose, like an empty chalice awaiting the wine of life. Suddenly, habits, routine, the beliefs that guided you, once as familiar as your own heartbeat, now echo with an unsettling silence, devoid of meaning, like a cracked shield that no longer protects the warrior. Perhaps you have already encountered this desolate inner landscape, like a desert after a storm. Activities that once nourished you, filling your soul with light, now repeat in a monotonous cycle, like shadows projected on a wall, like a warrior fighting without purpose. The melodies that vibrated within you, awakening deep emotions, now glide over the surface of consciousness, banal and without resonance, like a forgotten song. The places that served as a sanctuary, a refuge for the soul now seem strange, as if a veil had come between you and your essence, like a warrior lost in foreign lands. This change, this internal displacement, may initially engulf you in a fog of disorientation, as if a vital part of your being is asleep, disconnected from the flow of life, like a wounded warrior on the battlefield. But believe me, this doesn't signal an end, but rather the awakening to a profound transformation, the harbinger of a soul's rebirth, the beginning of the hero's journey. Robert Moore teaches us that when the unconscious, guided by the wisdom of archetypes, propels us toward a new stage of development, the mind, like a renewing garden, begins to release what no longer nourishes inner growth, what no longer serves the soul's journey, like a warrior abandoning his worn-out weapons. This mechanism, inherent in the cyclical nature of life, is how the unconscious prepares fertile ground for regeneration, for the blossoming of a new being, for the triumph of the hero. However, human instinct, clinging to the familiar, often resists the transformative current, like the warrior who clings to the past. We cling to past emotions as if they were roots binding us to barren land, like the warrior who refuses to abandon the battlefield. We force ourselves to rekindle the flame of enthusiasms that have already been extinguished, to cling to things that no longer resonate with our inner truth, like a warrior fighting with broken weapons. And in this, clinging in this futile effort, we question whether something is wrong with us, whether we have failed to keep the flame of joy burning, like a warrior who doubts his strength. But in reality, this apparent loss is a clear sign, a whisper from the soul announcing the expansion of consciousness, the search for something deeper, more authentic, more aligned with the essence of your being, the self's call to the journey of individuation. Naturally, the process of transformation, as Robert Moore shows us, is not without discomfort. The masculine psyche, in its journey to fullness, yearns for familiarity, for the comfort of the known, and any metamorphosis brings with it a sense of disorientation, a plunge into the unconscious. But if you perceive this change in yourself, don't fight it. Don't recoil from its transformative power. Let go of the things that no longer nourish you, that no longer irrigate your warrior soul. Have the courage to explore new paths, new rites of passage, new perspectives on the dance of life. For this is the King's call, the invitation to the blossoming of your true self, to the integration of your archetypes. And then an even clearer, stronger and unquestionable sign emerges, like a beacon illuminating the journey of the masculine soul, the repetition of patterns in your life, weaving a web of familiar events and emotions, similar situations, feelings echoing from the past, relationships that mirror each other, as if they were reflections in an ancient mirror. You always return to the same point, as if trapped in a circular labyrinth in a cycle of incomplete initiation, despite changing places, people, and time. The feeling is one of imprisonment in an invisible cycle, without a clear exit, without a path leading you out of this vicious circle, this archetypal possession. At first glance, it may seem mere coincidence, a game of chance, but Robert Moore reveals to us that the unconscious does not act randomly, that it communicates through symbols, through repeating patterns, like echoes of a message not yet understood by the warrior's consciousness. If something repeats in your life, it's because the lesson it carries, the initiation it proposes, has not yet been fully integrated, has not yet blossomed into masculine wisdom. Behind each pattern hides an archetypal message, a key to unlock the doors of understanding and liberation of the king, warrior, magician, and lover. And only when you truly hear the message, when you open yourself to your inner wisdom, can you escape the cycle, not by fleeing it, but by traversing it with a new consciousness, with the eyes of the soul awakened to the lesson it brings, to the archetype it reveals. The unconscious, in its deep and persistent wisdom, guides us along the paths of learning, individuation, and the integration of archetypes. If we don't learn the lesson the first time, it gently but firmly places us in similar situations repeatedly until our consciousness awakens and perceives what within us needs to be transformed, what needs to be healed, so that we can proceed on the journey of the masculine soul in the quest for the fullness of the king. It's as if life, in its silent weaving, offered us multiple opportunities to understand a hidden part of our own psyche, a part that we have always carried but have never been lucid enough to face, to integrate into our totality, into our masculine potential. However, not everyone perceives the cyclical nature of life, the archetypal wisdom hidden behind the repetitions. Many attribute these cycles to chance, karma, cruel fate, without realizing that they are, in fact, portals to the growth invites us to transform our inner warrior. The problem is, without conscious awareness, we repeat the same old behaviors, the same thought patterns, yet expect a different result. It's like planting the same seed and expecting a different fruit. This unconscious expectation keeps us trapped in a vicious cycle, preventing us from blossoming into whole men. Imagine a man continually involved in relationships that leave him feeling rejected, unvalued, always striving to be loved. Initially, he might attribute this to bad luck, believing all the women he meets are the same, that the world conspires against his happiness. But if we look deeper, with the eyes of the soul, through the lens of archetypes, we can glimpse a deeply rooted emotional belief, perhaps formed in childhood, in his relationship with his father. He may have learned that he needed to strive to be worthy of love, that his existence needed to be proven through achievement, obedience, or sacrifice to honor the warrior archetype. This belief, even if unspoken, acts silently, controlling his behavior in all relationships, guiding him toward choices that reinforce the old story, the limiting belief that imprisons him in the archetype of the immature lover. He chooses people who make him continue to prove his worth, who make him strive to be loved, perpetuating the cycle of suffering. The pattern repeats not because he consciously desires it, but because the unconscious, in its wisdom, tries to lead him back to the lesson yet unlearned, the wound that needs integration for the masculine soul to be liberated. This is the process of individuation, the journey to become the inner warrior, to find the king within, to blossom in all your power. The desire to break free from the superficiality of consciousness is not accidental. It's a call from the wild self, a sign that you are becoming a complete man, that your soul prepares for initiation. When you begin to question what you've accepted as absolute truth, when superficial answers no longer satisfy you, and you feel the impulse to seek life's deeper meaning, this isn't instability, it's the awakening of the inner hero. Although this journey may initially cause insecurity, forcing you to abandon what seemed safe, what gave you the illusion of control, this feeling is the clearest proof you're entering the unknown, embarking on a new cycle of growth and maturation of the masculine soul. Don't ignore this call from the wild self just because it's abstract, because it doesn't fit the patterns of the rational mind. Trust the process. Allow yourself to research, read, question, listen to the inner calling, and change. Not all answers will come immediately, but the journey itself is the path to transformation, to meeting your true self, the inner king. Answers will come in due time, but each step toward the unknown, each step taken on the threshold of what we don't understand, is a step toward your true nature, the core of your warrior being. This journey back home, to the self, isn't for everyone. It unfolds only for those ready to embrace mature masculinity, to become complete men, to embrace the process of individuation. A clear sign, a call from the wild self, that you are on this path of initiation is when the body, this vessel of the psyche, this temple of the sacred masculine, begins to show subtle reactions inexplicable to the rational mind. Many believe change resides only in the realm of thought, in the intellect, but Robert Moore always reminded us of the deep and inseparable connection between body, soul, and the archetypes that inhabit us. When an inner transformation is underway, when the psyche reorganizes for the emergence of the king, the body, in its ancestral wisdom, will be the first to feel the echoes of this change. You may begin to feel profound fatigue, a lassitude in the warrior soul, even without excessive exertion, or persistent insomnia without apparent cause, or the need to immerse yourself in sleep, in the womb of the Great Mother, a necessary return for the warrior longer than usual. Some experience anxiety, a tightness in the chest, as if the heart is being forged in the fire of transformation, or nausea without apparent medical reason, while others feel unusual peace, a deep serenity when facing life's challenges. All these reactions, these subtle signs, are not coincidental, not mere symptoms to be silenced with medication. They are the language of the body, the voice of the warrior soul speaking. Through its rhythms and sensations, a voice speaks that reason, often imprisoned by limiting beliefs, is too subtle to perceive. When we ignore the whispers of the wild self, the yearnings of the warrior soul, for too long, the body, in its innate wisdom, speaks louder, crying out for attention through symptoms and discomfort. Instead of hastily imposing logical explanations, rationalizations that only mask the inner truth, ask yourself, with the strength and compassion of the warrior, what is my soul processing? Which archetype is emerging from the shadows, seeking the light of consciousness? What have I suppressed, denied, that my body, this temple of the sacred masculine, is now carrying? The body never lies. It perceives the subtlest shifts in the energetic fields of the psyche and always seeks to guide you back to balance, inner harmony, the strength of the warrior. Don't resist these signs, these calls of the wild self. Observe them as a mirror, a reflection of the new version of yourself, the inner king, gestating within. Remember, many men abandon the path of personal development, the path of individuation, simply because they misinterpret the signs of transformation, the signs of the warrior's awakening, when, in truth, these bodily and emotional manifestations are proof that change has already begun and is happening more deeply and intensely than you imagine. Another strong and undeniable sign, another call of the wild self, is the emergence of recurring dreams, of symbolic images that emerge from the unconscious, as if carrying a hidden message, an ancestral wisdom. Robert Moore dedicated much of his work to exploring the dream world, to understanding the symbolic language of dreams, because he believed they are the most direct gateway. The unconscious, the dwelling place of archetypes, offers us. When you enter a period of internal transformation, of psychic metamorphosis, the unconscious begins to send symbolic images, archetypes that inhabit the collective psyche, sometimes obscure, but always full of emotion and depth. You may find yourself repeatedly dreaming of an unknown place, a magical realm that exists beyond the veil of reality, a journey you have never made in the material world, a journey of the warrior soul in search of itself, a person you don't know on the physical plane, but who represents an aspect of yourself, an archetype rising, or even intense, unnamed emotions, primordial energies circulating within your being. Don't underestimate these dreams, these symbolic messages. This is the particular language of the unconscious, the language of the warrior soul, a language that is not expressed through words, the linear concepts of the rational mind, but through metaphors, symbols, sensations, archetypes that resonate within your being. These dreams are the invisible map, the call of the wild self, guiding you to the still unexplored depths of yourself. If you have recently been having vivid dreams, dreams that resonate deeply in your soul, or encountered recurring symbols in your daily life, synchronicities that weave the web of destiny, it is very likely not a coincidence, but a subtle call from the unconscious, an invitation from the wild self to delve into your own essence. Listen. A seemingly meaningless dream, a fragment of a dream image, may contain the answer your conscious mind has not yet found. A fleeting scene, a symbol that repeatedly catches your attention, may contain the message, the key to the transformation, that you need to change something in your lifestyle, in the way you think, how you relate to the world, and above all, how you relate to yourself, to your warrior, to your inner king. Just a few minutes dedicated to contemplating a dream, to attentively listening to its symbols and emotions, can open doors to valuable insights, to a deep understanding of yourself, of your deep masculinity. And it is not only during sleep that the unconscious reveals its messages, its secret codes. It manifests throughout daily life, through repeated images, recurring numbers, synchronicities that seem to orchestrate events, unexpected encounters, or strange coincidences. All these are signs, calls of the wild self, that a deep part of you is trying to get your attention, guide you to your purpose, to your true essence, to the encounter with the king. If you constantly dream of water, the primordial element that represents emotions, this may be a sign that your feelings are overflowing, needing to be purified, released to flow freely like a rushing river. Doors in dreams can symbolize new opportunities, new portals opening on your path of initiation, or reflect the fear of change, of what the new represents. The sensation of falling in a dream, the vertigo of the unknown, often stemming from a fear of losing control, of surrendering to life's flow while flying, soaring like an eagle, symbolizes freedom, liberation, transcendence of inner limits, and expansion of consciousness. Teeth are frequently linked to insecurity, worry about change and the loss of what no longer serves, while being chased, fleeing something that haunts you, is a clear sign that you are avoiding a part of yourself, a repressed emotion, a buried memory. The soul's journey, the quest for the inner king, often manifests in whispers, in echoes resonating deep within our being. Robert Moore reminds us that ignoring a dream, a soul's call to initiation, is like refusing the sacred chalice offered by the unconscious itself. If you are receiving these signals, these whispers from the center of your psyche, don't ignore them. Begin to record them. Honor the deep masculine energy emerging from within. Keeping a dream journal isn't vague mysticism, but a powerful tool of self-discovery, a rite of passage to access the inner warrior and decipher repetitive patterns in your mind, the archetypes manifesting in your psyche, especially the king, the magician, and the warrior. When writing, don't rush to analyze or judge. Note everything: images, emotions, symbols, sensations. The more detail, the richer the exploration of your deep masculinity. Over time, things that seem disconnected, seemingly meaningless fragments, will gradually connect, forming a clear picture of the transformative journey, the dance of the inner king happening within you. You will realize that these seemingly chaotic images are, in fact, a map, an intentional arrangement of your unconscious mind, a sacred choreography, trying to guide you back to your true nature, your true self, your divine essence, the inner king. This may be one of the strongest and clearest signs that you are undergoing a process of initiation, of individuation, an awakening to the mature, masculine energy residing within you. And if you feel something emerging, if you can no longer be the man you were yesterday, if your soul yearns for expansion, believe it. You are on the right path, the path of initiation, even if that path is not yet entirely clear, even if the fog still prevents you from seeing the sacred mountain of your destiny. Now, as we delve into the world of dreams and unconscious symbols, into the realm of the inner king, it's time to touch upon another indicator, very special sensation, discomfort mixed with inner strength. It's the feeling of clearly knowing you no longer belong to the past, to the old patterns of childishness that imprisoned you, but you can't yet clearly envision the future, the new self, the inner king that is forming. And this contradiction, this paradox inherent in the initiation process, is the most vivid proof that you are growing, evolving towards the maturity of masculine energy, and that you can no longer go back to the cocoon that no longer contains you. The last sign, and perhaps the strongest, that you are truly on the path of initiation is insecurity accompanied by an inexplicable certainty that returning to the past, to childishness, is no longer an option. You know deep down that the inner warrior is awakening, that something within you is changing, transmuting. You feel a wave of transformation, a powerful energy of the inner king stirring within you. But at the same time, you no longer feel comfortable with the man you were, with the mask you wore to protect yourself from the world, as if a door has been opened to a new dimension of your being, to mature masculine energy. And although the path ahead is hazy, challenging, full of uncertainties, turning back is no longer a viable option. This is the most miraculous paradox of the growth process, of the king's journey. The discomfort that propels you forward, into the unknown, towards your true masculine essence. Many men believe that when they are on the right path, they will feel firm, secure, without fear or doubt. But the truth, as Robert Moore teaches us, is that deep evolution, genuine initiation, always happens amidst shifting sands, where inner strength and insecurity coexist, dance together on the stage of your psyche. Robert Moore taught us that it is precisely in these moments of instability, when we leave our comfort zone, the familiar patterns that limit us, dismantle old structures of childishness, limiting beliefs, and dare to face the unknown, the mystery of our own inner king, that true transformation begins. Therefore, if you feel you are no longer the same man, if you feel you are walking without knowing your final destination, if the fog still obscures the Sacred mountain on your horizon, don't panic. This is a good sign, a sign that you are opening yourself to the new, to the unknown, residing within, to full masculine energy. This state of emotional suspension, where you are, simultaneously afraid, curious, lost, yet also filled with the warrior's strength, is where the new self, the king, is being gestated, sculpted by the invisible hand of transformation. Don't give up just because you feel unstable, vulnerable, exposed to the storms of the soul. Instability isn't failure. It's the fertile ground for growth, for the blossoming of your true self, your inner king. And now that you've begun to notice the signs from the unconscious, the loneliness, the dreams, the feeling of emptiness, the repetitive patterns, the next step, the next stage of your initiation journey is to learn to interpret them, to decipher their secret codes, to integrate them into your mature masculinity and transform them to your advantage, into fuel for your growth. Because simply recognizing the signs isn't enough. True transformation, full initiation, only happens when you know how to connect, interpret, and act upon what your unconscious, your soul, is trying to tell you about, your inner king. Many men reach this point. They know intuitively that something within them is shifting, reorganizing itself for the maturity of masculine energy. They realize their worldview has expanded, that the old patterns of puerility no longer serve, but they are still trapped in the vicious cycle of doubt, fear, and hesitation, resisting the call of initiation. Robert Moore always emphasized that the first step to truly deciphering the messages of the unconscious, the whispers of the soul, is to bring them into the light of consciousness. That is, instead of ignoring strange dreams, repetitive patterns, or prolonged insecurity, one must embrace them, investigate them with the warrior's strength and the magician's wisdom, allowing the masculine energy inherent in these signs to illuminate your path to the king. The soul whispers the secrets of initiation, confront its inner echoes, as if they were runes etched on the warrior's shield, pieces of an ancestral tapestry revealing the fabric of your being. The deep psyche, the kingdom of the king, never speaks by chance. Every sigh, every dream image, every unnamed emotion carries a seed of masculine wisdom that the conscious mind hasn't yet fully blossomed. A simple yet profound way to begin this inner journey of initiation is through reflective journaling. Dedicate sacred time each day to record the subtle transformations in your being, the habits that have lost their resonance with the king, the dreams or intuitions that emerge like the warrior's sword, the cyclical patterns that repeat like rites of passage. Don't seek immediate answers. Just record, for the act of writing is the bridge that unites the underground river of the unconscious with the ocean of masculine consciousness. Another powerful tool is the dialogue with the soul, something Robert Moore highly valued. In moments of quietude, when you are in communion with yourself, close your eyes and imagine you are entering an inner sanctuary, the icy King's Castle. There you can ask your deep self, what does this dream whisper to my inner warrior? What meaning does this cyclical pattern reveal about my king? Why do I feel vulnerable at this stage of my initiation? Initially, silence may prevail, but with patience your soul will begin to respond with the strength and wisdom of masculine energy. Sometimes with a distant memory, an emotion surfacing like a spring, a sudden insight illuminating the path to the king. Among all the communication channels of the psyche, dreams are perhaps the most direct and subtle. Robert Moore believes that ignoring dreams is like rejecting the gifts of wisdom offered by the unconscious, by the inner king. In the waking state, the rational mind often represses the authentic emotions of the warrior. But during sleep, these barriers dissolve, and the soul finds freedom to express the truth of the king. If you yearn for self-knowledge, for the initiation of your masculinity, carefully observe the theater of your dreams. Don't worry if at first they seem chaotic or meaningless. The psyche doesn't express itself with words, but with symbols, images, and sensations that reveal the king, the magician, and the warrior. A dream journal will be your precious ally on the journey to full masculine energy. Each morning, while the dream images still dance in your memory, record everything, without judgment, without analysis. Over time, patterns will emerge, symbols will repeat, emotions will manifest. All are keys that unlock the portal to your inner treasure, to the inner king within you. Robert Moore speaks of archetypes, primordial psychic energies present in dreams, myths, and every fiber of your soul. Doors, representing initiation and access to spiritual power. Falls, symbolizing the descent into the underworld of the psyche and the loss of ego. Flight, the spiritual ascent and freedom of the warrior. Pursuit, the shadow of the magician projected onto oneself. Strangers, unknown aspects of your being. The emergence of the wild man. To understand their meaning, feel the emotions that accompany them. Connect with the energy of these archetypal images. Fear, excitement, peace, anguish. Emotion is the compass pointing towards the deep understanding of the lover, inaccessible to the rational mind of the sage. If your dreams are vivid and full of meaning, pay attention. Your soul, the true self, longs to be heard, to integrate with your sacred masculine and feminine. One of the most effective ways to decipher these messages is through silence and meditation, accessing the contemplative power of the sage. In a world full of noise, where attention is fragmented by notifications, superficial conversations, incessant work, and the demands of the inner tyrant, we lose connection with the inner voice of the king, where the answers we seek externally reside. Robert Moore teaches that intuition, the wisdom of the sage, is the portal to profound knowledge. Meditating is not silencing the mind, but observing thoughts and emotions without judgment, without the resistance of the tyrant's shadow. If you wish to understand the language of your soul, the wisdom of the inner king, set aside a few minutes daily for silence, for contemplative quietude. No phone, no distractions of the modern world, just breathing and welcoming what emerges from the unconscious. Initially, the mind, dominated by the tyrant, may be agitated, full of thoughts. This is natural part of the individuation process. The important thing is not to eliminate thoughts, but to recognize the archetypal patterns that manifest. What emotions, what energies repeat themselves, what thoughts, what aspects of the shadow emerge most frequently in your solitude, in your encounter with the wild man. Another profound practice is meditation with internal questions, seeking the wisdom of the sage. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and gently ask, with the compassion of the lover, what does my soul, my inner king, wish to reveal to me? Which archetype seeks to manifest itself? Observe without forcing an answer, without seeking the logic of the sage, trusting that inner wisdom will manifest at the opportune moment, guided by the power of the king. Try active visualization, so highly valued by Robert Moore, as a way to access the unconscious. Imagine you are entering a symbolic space, an archetypal realm, an enchanted forest, representing the wild man, an ancestral temple, the dwelling place of the sage, or an empty room symbolizing the fertile emptiness of the king. Observe the environment with the eyes of your soul. Is anyone present? A magician, a warrior, a lover? Does any object stand out? A sword, a chalice, a crown? A door ajar to the mysteries of initiation? And above all, how do you feel in this space? These images are not random. They are metaphors, archetypal messages sent by your soul, by the inner king, to express the inexpressible. Silence and meditation are not just relaxation tools, but portals back to your true self, to the totality of the self. In this state of tranquility, you will hear the whispers of the king, which the agitation of daily life, the dominion of the tyrant, usually muffles. And if there's one thing the psyche, guided by archetypes, does masterfully, it's repeating patterns until the archetypal lesson is integrated. Robert Moore states that nothing happens by chance. Each repeated experience is a reflection of an unintegrated archetype, of a psychic energy seeking expression. If you find yourself in the same type of relationship, perhaps a reflection of the lover's shadow, a recurring conflict at work, echoing the tyranny of the tyrant, or a persistent emotion, such as anxiety, frustration, or lack, you may be reliving an unfinished archetypal lesson, a dance with the shadow. Transform the question. Instead of, why does this always happen to me? Ask, what does this experience, this archetypal encounter, want to teach me? Which aspect of myself seeks integration? A small shift in perspective, a glimpse of the sage's wisdom, can open a new path, the hero's journey. Record the repeated patterns, the archetypal manifestations. When you find yourself in a familiar situation, a recurring sadness, or an old emotion returning, write down how you felt, how you reacted, and what the result was, as if you were deciphering a map of your soul. After a few weeks, when you revisit your records, a hidden truth, a message from the king, will be revealed. A truth your soul already knew and now asks to be seen, integrated into consciousness. Recognizing the patterns and archetypal signs, the next step is the action, the warrior's journey. Great changes aren't necessary. Robert Moore teaches that transformation, individuation, happens through the gradual integration of archetypes. Small, conscious steps, like changing an old habit, breaking the chains of the tyrant, making a choice that reflects your true self, the king's wisdom. Listening to your intuition, the sage's voice, instead of the familiar comfort of the persona. Read inspiring books, visit unknown places, talk to people who offer new perspectives, feed the inner warrior. Your psyche is always learning, and the more it's nourished by new experiences, the more resources it will have to heal and grow, to integrate the archetypes and manifest the totality of the self. Cultivate mindful presence, the sage's contemplative quietude. We often live like sleepwalkers between past and future, lost in the shadow of the tyrant, failing to inhabit the present. But it's in the now, the king's dwelling, observing a leaf dancing in the wind, feeling your breath flow, paying attention to a subtle sound, that we awaken deep perception. When you are truly present, you are listening to yourself, connected to the king's wisdom. Remember, transformation, individuation, is a journey, not a destination. Maturation, the integration of archetypes, is a continuous process. Each small change you make today will create a cumulative effect that will guide you to a deeper, stronger, and more authentic version of yourself, to the fullness of the self. Trust in the wisdom of your soul, the voice of the inner king. In this process of individuation, if you've begun to perceive the whispers of the soul, the signs of the archetypes, it means a part of you, which once slumbered in the shadows of the unconscious, in the realm of the wild man, is emerging into the light, into the king's consciousness. And now the choice to embrace the dance of transformation, to have the warrior's courage to penetrate the deepest layers of your being and allow this alchemy, this integration of archetypes, to complete itself, resides in the center of your sacred masculine and feminine, in the totality of the self. If you've come this far, you're not just hearing a message, you're meeting your own image reflected in the mirror of the soul, in the king's gaze. You know intuitively, guided by the sage's wisdom, that the signs from the unconscious are not mere coincidences, but echoes of the archetypal wisdom that resides within each of us. Robert Moore guides us beyond the walls of the persona to reach new landscapes of the psyche, new archetypal realms, and integrate the shadow, the inner wild man. And when you finally understand the symbolic language of these signs, the only question that resonates in your bones, echoing the king's voice, is, what will you do with this newly discovered pearl of wisdom? The truth is that many men and women have felt this call, the invitation to individuation, but chose to silence the inner voice, the king's wisdom. They continued to live in the dormancy of unconsciousness, repeating the same ancestral patterns, imprisoned by the shadow of the tyrant, wondering why life seemed like a faded tapestry. But you don't need to get lost in this labyrinth, because you felt the change vibrate in every cell of your body, the king's call. You know you can't return to the cocoon of the old identity, the prison of the persona. And now you find yourself before a portal, a sacred threshold, the door of initiation, where you can enter a wider space, fuller of meaning, more aligned with your true essence, with the totality of the self. If these signs are blossoming in your life, even if they are faint glimmers in the fog of uncertainty, this is a testament that you are walking the path of individuation guided by the king's wisdom. Even if this journey evokes doubts, oscillations, and even the desire to return to the familiar, to the comfort of the persona, remember that these fluctuations are an integral part of the awakening of consciousness, of the hero's journey. Don't fear the vastness of the unknown, the realm of the wild man. Don't recoil from the feeling of being lost in the dark forest of the soul in the encounter with the shadow. Trust the process of transformation, for everything that is happening, including the instability, is in the service of your growth, weaving the threads of your destiny, guided by the King's hand. Now I long to hear your voice, the expression of yourself. In your inner journey, what signs, what archetypes have you already perceived? Share your story in the comments. This will help me feel if I am on the right path, if this message, an echo of the King's wisdom, has found the fertile ground of your heart at the opportune moment. If this resonates with your soul, if it illuminated some dark corner of your being, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and share with other men and women who also need to awaken to their own inner light, to the King's call. Because today you might be the receiver of inspiration, the sage's student, and tomorrow you will be the torch illuminating the path for other travelers, the warrior's strength. We meet in the next video, where the journey of self-discovery, the process of individuation, continues step by step, breath by breath. On the path of awakening, you were born to walk, honoring the sacred masculine and feminine residing within you, the totality of the self.